Coming up on Richard French Live.
Imagine for a moment being convicted of a crime that you know you didn't commit, and you sit in prison for years upon years. Then new evidence comes out and it finds that you were innocent all along. Tonight, we're going to take a look at how much compensation the innocent should get.
Plus,
I'm Jessica Devereaux. I'll be looking at a case of a man who spent 18 years in Sing Sing prison simply because a witness at his trial committed perjury.
then,
Despite the delay in the vote on same-sex marriage in New Jersey, both sides of the debate are pushing their points of view. I'm Regina Orsania, and I'll have the latest on what the politicians and those who'll be affected are saying.
And we want your ticket home. Wrongfully convicted. Is $1 million justice for 20 years behind bars?
from RNN, this is RFL. News, analysis, perspective, opinion. This is Richard French, Live.
Good evening and welcome to Richard French Live. Federal government says if you're wrongly convicted of a crime, you're entitled to $50,000 for every year that you spent in prison. But imagine if you were wrongly convicted. Do you think that's enough? And it has been seen as the last best chance to have same-sex marriage become law in New Jersey. But though the politicians have put off making a final decision, the war of words has not eased up. We'll take a look at that later in the program. The TV show CSI, it is based on new ways of gathering evidence at the scene of a crime. And sometimes, years later, old evidence, it is looked at again using modern methods and found to be wanting. Now it has led to the release of a number of people who have been wrongly convicted. But how do you make up for all those wasted years is still a very difficult question to answer. That is a problem that we'll be looking at tonight with a question. Wrongfully convicted, is $1 million justice for 20 years behind bars? Put a number and a price on freedom. 888-RNN Chat is the toll-free number. We're going to get to your phone calls on that answer and question. And also you can sound off online. Send us your thoughts and your emails to rnntv.com. All that reactions coming up in just a few minutes. But we begin with one example. A man who spent the bulk of his adult life in prison because someone lied. Jessica Devereaux, she has this amazing story, and it's one, it turns out, of many cases.
It's quite a gripping story, Rich. At the age of 22, Fernando Bermudez was just hanging out with friends one evening in Washington Heights, New York. And then soon after, he was being arrested for a murder he didn't commit. It took the justice system 18 years to realize they had the wrong guy. And now, after his release, the state might have to figure out the cost of his lost time.
Some of these pictures I haven't seen yet.
40-year-old Fernando Bermudez has not been around for most of the pictures from his family photo album. That's because for the past 18 years, he's been in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
Torturous, because every day I would wake up and go to sleep with the same thought, why am I here? When the truth is there's evidence that I'm clearly innocent.
After a witness from his case confessed to perjury, Fernando was exonerated of all murder charges and released from Sing Sing prison in Ossining, New York. He remembers his first steps as a free man.
I walked out of Sing Sing prison, and that was just a marvelous day.
After 11 appeals, his wife Crystal says she never lost hope that he would be home someday. The day of his release, she took a picture of him on her cell phone and sent it to all her friends and family to spread the good news.
Even now I go back to that picture because it just seems so unreal. Like if he disappears for a moment and then he comes back, like, wow. I mean, it's been 2 weeks now and I'm still like shocked.
It might be all smiles now, but after his 18-year-long battle with the justice system, Fernando says he's still angry and bitter.
Going to trial would be something as simple as just telling the truth, and it would be a mathematical formula in which 1 + 1 = freedom. And that wasn't the case. There was more complications. There was a certain calculus that certainly stumped me. And, you know, I went through a state of disillusion where I realized that the system was more complicated and difficult than I ever imagined.
But Fernando's case is not unique, such as the case of Marty Tankleff, who was wrongfully convicted of killing his parents in Long Island. After 17 years behind bars, Tankleff was finally cleared of the crime. He is currently in the process of suing Suffolk County law enforcement, and on his website he asked for donations to cover lawyer fees. Also, there was the case of James Tillman. He was wrongfully imprisoned on a kidnapping and rape charge and spent more than 16 years in prison. Initially, the state of Connecticut offered him just $500,000 in compensation, but it was countered, and the state legislature voted to compensate him with $5 million instead. But those who are exonerated don't always walk away with millions or even close. Like in the case of Vincent Motto, he was wrongly incarcerated for 9 years and has received nothing from the state of Pennsylvania. 23 states in the U.S. do not offer any compensation to those who are exonerated.
In the 20-some other states that don't provide compensation, those people get zero. In some other states, you have really insufficient compensation being provided to people, almost a token amount.
The Innocence Project is trying to change that. They reported that 81% of those exonerated do not receive compensation up to the federal standard. The federal government will compensate up to $50,000 for each year a person is wrongfully imprisoned. State by state, the law varies. In New Jersey, the law stipulates that twice the amount of the exoneree's income in the year prior to incarceration, or $20,000 per year of incarceration. In New York, Court of Claims determines what amount will fairly and reasonably compensate the wrongfully convicted person and has no maximum amount. In Connecticut, compensation on claims for loss of liberty, loss of earning capacity, physical and mental pain, and attorney's fees and other expenses related to such person's wrongful conviction. And as for the state of Pennsylvania, there is no compensation law.
Compensation is just one effort, one means of trying to help the person overcome what they can never get back, but also a way to ensure that despite what was done to them, they have a foothold on being able to develop a successful life in the remaining years they have.
Fernando is still unsure if he wants to sue, but he believes a wrong needs to be made right.
There's been a great wrong in this case, and it's clear. You know, whatever the legislative body sees fit to redress this wrong, it's in their control at this point.
Right now, Fernando is looking towards the future. He has an associate's degree that he earned while in Sing Sing prison through the Hudson Link Project. The project offers courses to incarcerated men in association with Mercy College. Fernando is now 5 credits away from earning his bachelor's degree, and he would love to teach what he calls a valuable lesson to others.
Knowing that if I at least appreciate the quality of life rather than the quantity, I can make some peace.
Fernando is taking one day at a time, and he says his lawyers will be the ones handling any claims to New York State. But with only 40% of exonerees receiving any form of assistance, compensation claims are not simply open and shut cases, Rich.
And we're going to talk about what price justice here, what is fair compensation not. But let's talk a little bit about Fernando. The person who lied, the perjurer, they're going through the criminal justice system now?
They are, and there still is, the verdict is still out on what will be happening to them. But 5 people said that they saw him, identified him as the murderer, and all 5 have turned back and said that they essentially committed perjury.
You know, he said in the piece, he is bitter. And I've talked to a few other people who've been wrongly convicted over the years and exonerated. Said, oh no, I left that behind. Otherwise, I can't go on with my life if I carry that with him. But he's very clear. He's angry. And I think human nature, that he spent 18 years of his life behind bars for something he didn't do.
Yes, he's definitely still angry. He told me that while behind bars, what was keeping him going was really his education. It kept him mentally strong. And now that he's out, he's really just looking towards the future. But of course, he still has that anger inside.
Him personally, the one thing that struck me is, when the guys get outside the walls, they say, I can't believe how everything's moving so fast. Technology, I'd imagine, must even be a learning curve for him.
For sure. He told me that he tried sending a text message and he sent it and he wasn't sure it went through. So he's learning how to use email, internet, a lot of things that weren't available back 18 years ago.
All right, now I'm going to ask you the same question we'll be asking our audience, Jessica. Having gone through this in different states with different laws as it relates to compensation, where do you think the balance is? One state, 50 grand for a year locked up for something you didn't do. Where do you think justice should start and stop when somebody's found out that they served a lot of time behind bars for something they didn't do?
I think justice starts with as soon as they exit that prison, and services need to be provided for these men and women who need transportation, social services, things of that nature. So it's all about just getting people back, getting their feet back on the ground.
And do you think there needs to be something uniform, or right now it seems state by state, depending on where you were convicted and where you served time, there's different compensation rules?
Yeah, different compensation rules. Actually, Texas has the best compensation rules, but yeah, it varies depending on the state.
All right, thank you very much, Jessica. All right, now I want to bring you at home into our conversation. And again, our question for you. Wrongfully convicted. Is $1 million justice for 20 years behind bars? Is that justice for you? Now, we attached the number to it, but as you heard from Jessica, for some states, you might not see a dime. 888-RNN Chat's our toll-free number. Get on the phone lines right now. Make your opinion heard. You can also tell us what you have to say online. Send us your emails to rnntv.com. Reaction and much, much more coming up after this quick commercial break.